Tempest in Teyvat, Rimuru's Elemental Odyssey by KabirSingh808. The blue-haired phantom's Knight of Justice. Ojal charged forward, his imposing figure in a refined human form, every step radiating authority. His eyes burned with a deep oceanic hue, and his long, dark blue hair trailed behind him as he aimed a powerful kick toward Azathoth. The dark entity, his eyes pure black and void-like, ducked under the blow with eerie precision. Basht followed close behind, her human form exuding an air of regal ferocity. Her blue eyes glimmered as she unleashed a rapid series of punches, each infused with aquatic energy that shimmered with a turquoise glow. Azathoth twisted and weaved through the attacks, his movements unnervingly fluid, his gaze unreadable and filled with a sinister calm. Azathoth understood his position clearly. This form was not even a fraction of his full might, a mere leak from the seal that bound his true self. He couldn't afford to prolong this battle. If the seal closed fully, even this fragment would be lost. He needed to end this fight swiftly. Ojal's voice boomed, calm yet commanding, as he struck again with a spinning kick aimed at Azathoth's side. "You won't win. This ends here." Azathoth sidestepped, his black eyes locking with Ojal's, and replied in a voice that echoed like a storm, "Win. I don't play games. This is a lesson in despair." With a flick of his wrist, Azathoth summoned tendrils of dark energy that erupted from the ground, snaking toward Ojal and Basht. Basht responded instantly, raising her arms as a shimmering water shield enveloped her. The tendrils collided with the barrier, shattering into droplets of shadow. Ojal seized the opportunity to press forward, lunging at Azathoth with a glowing trident he summoned in an instant. Azathoth deflected the weapon with his arm, the impact sending shockwaves through the air. A faint smirk appeared on his face as he unleashed a burst of energy, forcing Ojal and Basht to leap back. From a distance, Ether observed the clash, gripping his sword tightly. His golden eyes flickered with determination as the faint glow of the soul corridor linking him to Rimuru pulsed within him. Paimon tugged at his sleeve nervously. "Ether, are you really going to stay here, Paimon?" Ether interrupted, his voice steady but firm. Ether stepped into the fray, his sword shimmering with elemental power. His presence caught Azathoth's attention, the dark figure's black eyes narrowing as a faint trace of curiosity crossed his face. Basht smirked as she glanced at Ether. "Well, looks like the little hero is ready to join us." Amid the fierce clash, where Ojal, Ether and Basht were trading blows with Azathoth, Yamiko slipped away from the chaos, her movements as smooth and deliberate as a fox stalking its prey. She navigated toward the center of the domain, where Seal tirelessly worked on sealing the fragment of Azathoth. Ye leaned slightly forward, her expression curious as she addressed the shimmering figure of Seal. "Hello, little one. Need a hand?" Seal's golden glow flickered for a moment, analyzing the fox-eared figure before responding in a calm tone. "You possess the Gnosis, don't you?" Ye tilted her head, her playful smile widening. "Oh, you mean the chess piece-looking thingy? I suppose I do. Why? It can help," Seal stated firmly. "Take it outside and hand it to Raiden Shogun. She can use its power to stabilize Master Rimuru temporarily." Ye's smile froze for a moment, a flicker of interest crossing her face. "Are you saying that little trinket has more power than meets the eye?" "Yes," Seal confirmed. "It is essential. Deliver it." Before Ye could reply, several papers and sealed letters materialized, floating gently into her hands. She raised a brow, inspecting them briefly. "And these? What are they for?" Ciel's voice remained steady. "They contain irrefutable evidence of the Fatui's dealings with the Kuju clan and Kanju commissions. When this battle is over, use them to expose the truth. That is your role." As Ye turned the letters over in her hand, a sudden crash shook the area. Basht was sent hurtling across the battlefield, landing with a deafening thud near them. Dust and debris rose around her as she groaned, pushing herself to her feet with a determined glare. Azathoth's black-eyed form loomed in the distance, his aura pulsating with a malevolent intensity. Basht brushed off her injuries, giving a curt nod to Seal and Ye before charging back into the fray. Her strikes glowed with aquatic energy as she rejoined Ojal and Ether in their relentless assault on Azathoth. Ye watched Basht vanish into the chaos, then turned back to Seal. "Are you sure you don't need my help here?" Her tone was light, but there was a hint of genuine concern beneath it. Ciel's response was resolute. "No. But your friend Raiden does. Go to her." Ye chuckled softly, her fox-like smile returning. You're awfully direct, aren't you? Fine, I'll go. Without another word, Ciel's energy flared, and with a flash of light, Ye was teleported out of the personal space, leaving her letters and the Gnosis in hand. Ether stood firm, his twin swords glowing with elemental energy. His Anemo sword, shimmering with emerald light, cut through the air, sending sharp wind blades toward Azathoth. The black-eyed entity smirked, his movements fluid as he deflected the attack with a casual wave of his hand. With a resonant thud, Azathoth tapped the ground with his newly summoned cane. Its design was dark and ominous, black and gray, with a faint swirl of energy coiling at its base. As it struck the ground, the air trembled, and hundreds of ethereal arms erupted around him, writhing like serpents ready to strike. The arms surged forward in unison, targeting Ether, Ojal, and Basht. Each of them leapt into action. Ojal used his immense strength, striking down the arms in quick succession, while Basht, her aquatic energy swirling around her, created a barrier to deflect the onslaught. Ether, on the other hand, weaved between the attacks, using his wind-enhanced speed to evade and counter where possible. Amid the chaos, Azathoth's eyes shifted toward Ciel. In an instant, his form dissolved into a swirling mass of black smoke, rushing past his opponents and reappearing beside her. His clawed hand extended toward the shimmering figure, his intent clear. Before the strike could land, a resounding clang echoed through the space as Ether's sword intercepted the blow. Sparks flew as claw met blade, and Azathoth's black eyes narrowed. Azathoth murmured, his gaze locking onto Ether. A faint, amused smile tugged at his lips as he stepped back, assessing his new opponent. You carry an essence that feels familiar. A mixture of Rimuru's and something else. His eyes gleamed with interest, his tone both intrigued and wary. Ether's grip on his sword tightened, his expression resolute. He moved with precision, slicing horizontally toward Azathoth, who gracefully leapt back to avoid the strike. I see, Azathoth said, his grin widening into something more menacing. He raised his cane, tapping it lightly against the ground once more as the ethereal arms retreated momentarily. It seems you are more of a problem than I anticipated. What do you mean? Ether demanded, his voice steady despite the tension. Azathoth's gaze bore into him, a mixture of malice and understanding. You carry a piece of Rimuru's soul, a shard intertwined with your own life force. It may not be much now, but in time, it will grow. You will change, evolve, perhaps even become something that could become a potential problem for me. His grin turned dark. And I cannot allow that to happen. The weight of Azathoth's words hung in the air as Ether's eyes widened in realization. Yet, he didn't falter. Taking a defensive stance, he prepared for the next assault. Azathoth's form shifted again, his cane dissolving into black energy as his claws extended further. You, too, must die. It's the only way to ensure my future remains unchallenged. Azathoth charged forward, his speed blurring as he reappeared in front of Ether in an instant. His claws gleamed with dark energy, ready to sever Ether's head in one swift motion. However, just as the strike was about to land, a clang resounded as Basht interceded, her shield absorbing the force of the blow. Without missing a beat, Ojal followed with a devastating punch aimed at Azathoth's side. The blow landed, forcing Azathoth to slide back slightly. His gaze sharpened, irritation flashing in his black eyes. Time was running out for him. The seal was maintaining grew stronger with every passing second, threatening to trap even this fragment of his essence. He knew he had to eliminate her first to tip the scales in his favor. However, Ojal and Basht's relentless interference was proving problematic, and Ether was a new and unforeseen complication. His potential to become a significant threat loomed in Azathoth's mind. With an audible growl, Azathoth's aura surged, an oppressive wave of energy rippling outward. He raised his cane again, tapping it forcefully against the ground. Once more, the black, ethereal hands emerged, swarming toward his enemies like a tidal wave of despair. As the chaotic barrage ensued, Azathoth locked his focus on Ojal. Dodging the strikes coming his way, Azathoth appeared before him in a flash. His fist, charged with condensed black energy, struck Ojal squarely in the face with unrelenting force. The impact sent the mighty being hurtling across the battlefield, crashing into the distance. Ojal. Basht's voice roared with anger and concern. Her emotions surged as she transformed into her immense Hydra form, her serpent head striking at Azathoth with vicious precision. Azathoth smirked darkly, taunting her. "Oh, so you can feel anger. How amusing." Dodging her strikes with ease, he leapt high into the air. From above, he looked down at her with contempt before summoning enormous black hands from the ground. The shadowy appendages wrapped around Beist's massive form, pinning her in place. "Let's see how long your rage lasts," Azathoth mocked as the hands began to swell ominously. Beisht struggled, her hydra form thrashing as she tried to break free. Ether, witnessing the dire situation, rushed forward in an attempt to help her. However, as he closed the distance, the shadowy hands suddenly detonated. The explosion was deafening, a massive wave of energy blasting outward. Ether was thrown backward, the shockwave forcing him to shield his face with his arms. As the smoke cleared, the sight before him was grim. Beisht lay defeated, her hydra form sprawled on the ground, her breath shallow. Ether's heart sank. Despite her immense strength, she had been overwhelmed. Before he could process the scene, he felt a chilling presence behind him. Instinctively, he spun and slashed horizontally with his sword, but his blade met nothing but air. "Behind you!" Paimon screamed, her voice shrill with panic. Ether's eyes widened, his body moving to react, but it was too late. Azathoth's clawed hand was mere inches away from his neck. Time seemed to slow as Ether realized he couldn't escape the strike. The moment of despair was broken by a sudden beam of energy cutting through the air. The blast struck Azathoth in the side, sending him flying away. Ether stumbled, his neck bleeding from a shallow gash left by Azathoth's claws. He clutched the wound, his breath uneven, and turned to see who had saved him. Ojal stood in the distance, his breathing heavy but his resolve unshaken. Despite the earlier blow that had sent him flying, he had returned. His body bore visible injuries, but he stood tall, his energy crackling as he prepared for another assault. "You will not harm him," Ojal declared, his voice echoing across the battlefield. Ether's gaze flickered between Ojal and Beisht, his determination reigniting. Though the odds seemed insurmountable, he refused to let despair consume him. Azathoth, recovering from the blast, rose to his feet, his expression a mixture of annoyance and intrigue. "You're all more persistent than I expected," he muttered, brushing off the scorched marks on his side. His aura darkened further as he prepared for the next phase of the battle. As the battle raged on, the air was thick with tension and the oppressive aura of Azathoth's unrelenting power. Ciel's voice echoed in their minds, calm but firm. "Just hold on for a few more minutes," she urged. "The seal will be complete soon." Ojal, battered but resolute, nodded. "We'll do our best. Let's end this." He glanced at Ether, who tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. Both prepared themselves as Azathoth, consumed by rage and frustration, launched himself toward them with blinding speed. Azathoth closed the gap with Ojal first, his strikes wild yet precise. The two began trading punches, each blow reverberating through the air. Ether seized the opportunity, darting toward Azathoth with his sword raised. But Azathoth, anticipating the attack, vanished from sight. Ether's instinct screamed, but it was too late. A sharp kick struck his back, the sheer force propelling him forward. The impact knocked into Ojal, sending both of them stumbling. Azathoth smirked from above, having used Ether's back as leverage to launch himself upward. A massive orb of black energy coalesced in his hand, its dark tendrils crackling ominously. With a sharp motion, Azathoth hurled the orb toward them. "Move!" Ojal shouted. The two darted away just in time as the energy ball detonated upon impact, creating an immense explosion that rocked the battlefield. Dust and debris filled the air as Ether and Ojal scrambled to regain their footing. As Ether paused to catch his breath, Azathoth materialized before him in a flash, his claws gleaming. He slashed at Ether, who barely managed to block with his sword. But Azathoth's relentless strikes began to crack the blade. Each blow came with more force, and with a final strike, the sword shattered into fragments. Azathoth grinned darkly. "What will you do now, little hero?" Before Ether could react, Azathoth's kick landed squarely in his abdomen, sending him flying backward. He hit the ground hard, coughing as blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Ojal rushed in to take his place, engaging Azathoth in a fierce clash. Meanwhile, Ether struggled to his feet, his gaze falling on the broken remains of his sword. Frustration and despair flickered across his face as he clenched his fists. From the sidelines, Seal watched the scene unfold. Her focus sharpened as she murmured, "This is troublesome, looks like I have to test it now." Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the air before Ether. A sword materialized, descending gracefully to the ground. It resembled his old blade, but it was different. The hilt gleamed with a new brilliance, and the sheath bore two mysterious holes, faintly glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. Ether stared at it, momentarily stunned. He reached out and grasped the hilt, feeling an unfamiliar yet comforting power course through him. As Ether examined the sword given by Seal, he noticed its intricate craftsmanship. The blade gleamed with an ethereal sheen, exuding a faint but undeniable power. Its sheath bore two empty, spherical indentations, their purpose unclear. The weight of the sword wasn't merely physical, it carried an almost overwhelming presence, resonating deeply with something within him. Ciel's voice echoed in Ether and Ojul's minds, calm yet commanding. Ether, Ojul, moved toward Basht immediately. Ether looked toward the unconscious Hydra, confusion flashing in his eyes. "Basht, why?" he asked aloud. Ojul, though battered and cautious, began retreating toward her, his movements slow and calculated as he fended off Azathoth's relentless assaults. Azathoth noticed their shift in focus and smirked. He stopped his assault briefly, tilting his head mockingly. "Oh, you want to get to her so badly." Azathoth sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Let me speed things up for you." In an instant, he surged forward, appearing directly in front of Ojul. Before Ojul could react, Azathoth planted a devastating kick into his chest. The force sent Ojul hurtling through the air, colliding with the ground next to Basht. Dust and debris rose from the impact as Ojul groaned, struggling to rise. Ether watched, horror and anger flashing in his eyes as he turned toward Azathoth. Meanwhile, Azathoth's eyes narrowed as he turned toward Seal. He could sense her energy stabilizing the seal, time was slipping away. His grin grew wider, more unhinged, as he moved toward her with terrifying speed. As Azathoth neared Seal, the grin on his face widened into a twisted expression of triumph. He was mere steps away from her now, the seal regenerating behind her, glowing brighter with each passing second. "You've lost," he roared, raising his claw to strike. But before he could deliver the blow, an overwhelming wave of energy surged behind him. The air trembled violently, a deafening hum filling the battlefield. Azathoth's smug expression faltered as his instinct screamed at him to move. He twisted his head just in time to see a colossal vertical energy strike descending upon him, its sheer brilliance illuminating the entire space. The strike landed squarely on Azathoth's back with catastrophic force. Boom! The ground beneath them split apart, creating a massive ravine that stretched nearly 100 meters. The impact was so intense that it echoed like thunder, sending tremors rippling through the entire personal space. Azathoth was hurled into the depths of the ravine, his form crashing into the ground below with an earth-shaking roar. Debris flew in all directions, and a thick cloud of dust and smoke shrouded the area. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the faint crackling of residual energy lingering in the air. All eyes turned toward the source of the attack. As the smoke cleared, a figure floated above the battlefield, exuding an awe-inspiring aura. It was Ether, but he was utterly transformed. His once boyish appearance had matured, his frame taller, his muscles more defined, and his presence radiating authority. His golden eye still burned brightly, but his left eye now glowed with an intense, vibrant blue, as if the essence of a water resided within it. Blue strands of energy coiled around his arms like living chains, occasionally sparking as they pulsed with power. His hair, once entirely golden, now showed streaks of glowing blue at the tips, as though touched by the energy coursing through him. The sword given by Seal was in his hand, fully awakened. The two previously empty slots in its sheath were now filled with radiant blue orbs, pulsating in harmony with Ether's aura. Hovering just above the ground, Ether's presence was overwhelming, forcing even the battlefield itself to yield to him. Azathoth, still reeling from Ether's devastating strike, struggled to rise from the wreckage of the ravine. Azathoth clawed his way out of the ravine, his body battered and his expression dark with rage. He coughed, black smoke leaking from his form as he stared at Ether with disbelief. What is this?" Azathoth growled, his voice trembling with both anger and unease. His form, a twisted mass of black liquid and dark energy, trembled as his body slowly regenerated, but something was different now. His fingers, from the tips to the knuckles, began to turn into the same black liquid that formed his essence. A sickening, pulsing energy seeped from the cracks in his skin as his transformation accelerated. No! Azathoth screamed, his voice a cacophony of distorted, tortured souls, each syllable distorted by the agony that reverberated through the very air. His hand, still trying to grip the ground, turned fully into the black liquid, spreading quickly up his arm. His eyes widened as he realized what was happening. He had failed to stop the process, failed to halt the regeneration of the seal behind Seal. His gaze snapped to Seal, who stood tall and unshaken amidst the battlefield. Her smile, once calculating, had shifted into something far more sinister. The glow of the seal behind her flickered, not yet complete, but too far along for Azathoth to stop. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. It was too late. No! Azathoth roared, his voice now shifting into 1,000 screams at once, each one more anguished than the last. His body writhed, twisting violently as the liquid-like darkness continued to consume him. You bastards, you will pay for this. As his voice morphed into an impossible crescendo, a violent surge of energy erupted from Azathoth's body. The air around him crackled, vibrating with the sheer weight of the power being released. His form began to shift, to melt into the very liquid that had once been the essence of his being, until his once towering figure was nearly unrecognizable. The thousands of souls that now cried out within him echoed, making it impossible to discern where Azathoth ended and the energy began. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the voice stopped. Silence. Seal and Paimon turned towards Ether just as he landed with a heavy thud. He hit the ground hard, his body slumping, and for a moment, everything seemed to still. The two spherical blue orbs that had once been contained in Ether's sword sheath fell from their resting place, bouncing slightly before coming to a halt on the ground. Ether's body then collapsed entirely, his sword slipping from his grasp, now completely drained. His transformation, the brilliant aura of blue and gold, had vanished as quickly as it had come, and in its place, he lay vulnerable and unconscious. The sheer toll of the transformation, the overwhelming energy coursing through him, had taken its toll. Ether's body reverted to its normal form, his once vibrant energy now depleted as the orbs by his side began to shift and glow faintly. With a subtle flicker of light, the orbs transformed into their true forms, Ojal and Basht. The two gods stood over Ether, confusion evident in their expressions. Basht knelt down beside Ether, her eyes scanning his unconscious body. What happened? What is this? She asked, her voice edged with concern. They exchanged a look, and with a shared nod, Ojal and Basht turned to Seal. She had remained standing, watching the battlefield with the same calm demeanor. The battle may have subsided for now, but the lingering threat was still palpable in the air. The seal was still regenerating behind her, though it had not yet fully completed. Master Seal, Ojal spoke, his voice low but decisive, Ether is in bad condition. We need to take him to a safe place. Seal gave a slight nod. Take Ether and Paimon to Master Rimuru's personal space. I'll handle the rest here. Ciel's voice, cold and commanding, echoed through the space. After that, go outside to Master Rimuru and protect him, and make sure no harm comes to him. It's the priority now. As Ether finished recounting his experience, Rimuru rested his chin on his hand, deep in thought. After a moment of silence, he let out a small chuckle. Looks like she actually worked on what I asked her for, he said, referring to Seal. And it came in handy. Ether nodded in agreement. It did. Without it, things could have gone much worse. Rimuru sighed as he leaned back. Well, there's no time to relax yet. I should send one of my clones to Narukami Island to check if Ye managed to do what she promised. Paimon, hovering near Ether, piped up, yeah, we need to know if she was able to persuade Raiden to stop the Vision Hunt decree or not. Rimuru nodded at Paimon's remark, focusing for a moment as his form shimmered faintly. A swirling golden light appeared next to him, materializing into one of his clones. The clone stepped forward before its form began to morph, shrinking and changing shape until it transformed into a sleek, azure-feathered bird. All right, you know what to do, Rimuru said, glancing at his clone. The bird let out a faint chirp in acknowledgement before flapping its wings and taking flight. It soared into the skies, heading straight for Narukami Island. As Rimuru stood up and stretched, he turned to Ether and Paimon with a small smile. Well, let's take a walk. I still need to meet a lot of people on this island and see more of its wonders. Ether and Paimon both nodded, following him out of the house where he was staying. The moment Rimuru stepped outside, he found himself greeted by the serene beauty of Watatsumi Island. The village he was in, nestled in the southern part of the island, still bore traces of its purpose as a camp for training soldiers during the Watatsumi army's resistance against the shogunate. Though peaceful now, it exuded an air of quiet strength and resilience. Rimuru's gaze traveled across the island, taking in the breathtaking surroundings. The vibrant, lush foliage shimmered with hues of blue, pink, and violet, colors unlike anything found elsewhere in Teyvat. They seemed to pulse with a soft glow, adding an ethereal quality to the landscape. In the center of the island stood the grand Sangonomiya shrine, its presence commanding yet harmonious with nature. The shrine, surrounded by gently flowing waters, emanated a tranquil yet powerful aura, as if it were the heart of Watatsumi Island itself. Rimuru couldn't help but admire the view, his expression softening. "Oh, this is beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice filled with genuine wonder. Ether nodded, sharing Rimuru's sentiment. "It really is. Watatsumi Island has a charm that's unique even in Teyvat." Paimon floated near them, chiming in enthusiastically. "That's the Sangonomiya shrine, Rimuru. It's where Kokomi, the divine priestess, lives. She's the leader of Watatsumi Island." Rimuru nodded thoughtfully, taking in her words as his gaze lingered on the shrine. "Kokomi, huh? I've heard a bit about her. Seems like she's a brilliant strategist too." Before Paimon could add more to her explanation, a voice called out from behind them. "Long time no see, traveler." The group turned to see a man approaching them with a friendly wave. His attire was a mix of traditional Watatsumi-style clothing, a light red-white gradient shitagi with a red-violet left sleeve, gray kobakama, and waraji sandals. Though his back was partially turned, Rimuru caught a glimpse of the Sangonomiya clan's crest imprinted on the back of his shitagi. The man waved at Ether and Paimon, who quickly recognized him. "Oh, it's you," Paimon said, floating closer. "You're back. How are your patrols going, Teppei?" Teppei grinned as he came to a stop in front of them. "It's going well, Paimon. Things have been peaceful lately, which is a nice change of pace." His gaze shifted to Rimuru, curiosity evident in his expression. "And you must be Rimuru," he said, extending a hand. Rimuru nodded and shook Teppei's hand. "That's me. Nice to meet you, Teppei." "The pleasure's mine," Teppei replied warmly. "I've heard a lot about you. Looks like we've got someone impressive on our side." As they exchanged pleasantries, Paimon chimed in again. "We actually met Teppei while we were roaming around Watatsumi Island, waiting for you to wake up, Rimuru. He was super helpful in showing us around." Teppei scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "It was nothing, really. The traveler and Paimon have done so much for this island, I was just glad to help." Rimuru gave him a small smile. "Well, it's good to meet you, Teppei. It seems like everyone on this island is strong and dependable." Teppei puffed up his chest slightly, clearly pleased by the compliment. "We all do our part. Anyway, if there's anything you need or anywhere you want to go, just let me know. I'll be around." As Teppei turned to leave, Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon continued their walk. As Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon strolled along the winding paths of Watatsumi Island, the breathtaking scenery filled Rimuru with awe. The vibrant foliage, painted in hues of lavender and aqua, danced gently in the breeze. Streams of sparkling water cascaded down rocky cliffs, and the serene hum of nature created an almost magical atmosphere. As they walked, Rimuru's gaze fell upon a group of villagers gathered near a field, their expressions marked by worry as they examined a patch of withered crops. The plants were clearly struggling, their stems drooping and leaves yellowed. Rimuru paused, his curiosity piqued. "Wait," he said, pointing toward the field. "Are those the holy soil problems I read about in the Mondstadt library?" Paimon flitted closer to him, nodding energetically. "Yep, that's right. You sure know a lot, Rimuru. It's like you've been studying for an exam or something." Rimuru chuckled. "I like to be prepared. Reading about it is one thing, but seeing it in person, it hits differently." He glanced back at the villagers, his brows furrowed. "I also remember reading that there's a legend tied to this holy soil." Before Ether or Paimon could respond, a soft yet confident voice interrupted them. Yes, there is indeed a legend, the voice said, and it's something that has shaped the beliefs of many here. The group turned to see Sangonomiya Kokomi approaching with Garo at her side. Kokomi's calm and composed demeanor radiated an air of authority, yet there was warmth in her expression. Garo, ever diligent, gave a polite nod to Rimuru and Ether, his tail flicking slightly as he greeted them. Kokomi said with a small smile, "Your knowledge of Watatsumi's issues is impressive for someone who just woke up." Rimuru inclined his head respectfully. "I appreciate the compliment, but I've only read a little. Hearing it directly from you would be far more insightful." Kokomi nodded and folded her hands neatly. "The holy soil problem is something that has plagued our island for generations. Some of our people believe in the legend that attributes the land's infertility as the depths of Enkanomiya attempts to absorb the spirit of Watatsumi Island, which causes the soil to bleach and erode, making the land infertile and unable to grow crops. Others, like Suyuko, propose a more scientific explanation. The salinity and alkalinity of seawater leach nutrients from the soil, rendering it unsuitable for agriculture." Rimuru stroked his chin thoughtfully. "That explanation makes sense scientifically," he said, "but I have a question. Why doesn't this happen on other islands exposed to seawater?" Kokomi tilted her head, intrigued. "Are you suggesting the legend might hold some truth?" "Not necessarily," Rimuru replied, his tone even. "I'm just saying we shouldn't dismiss it outright. After all, we've seen so-called myths and legends turn out to be real. Take the fragments of the moons, for example. People thought those were just stories, but they turned out to have a basis in reality. Without proper investigation, it's impossible to say for sure." Kokomi's lips curled into a small smile. "You bring a balanced perspective, Rimuru. It's refreshing." Before the conversation could delve further into theories, Rimuru shifted the topic, his expression turning more practical. "As for the immediate problem with your vegetation," he said, "I think I can help." Ether and Paimon turned to him in surprise. "Wait, really?" Paimon asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "You can do that," Ether added. Rimuru nodded confidently. "I can provide access to part of my personal dimension. It's a space where time and conditions are entirely under my control. Your people could grow vegetation there without worrying about soil quality or weather conditions." Paimon gasped. "Wow, that sounds amazing. You've got a whole farming dimension." Ether nodded, recalling his earlier experiences. "Oh yeah, I remember. Rimuru uses his personal space to grow all kinds of flora he's encountered. It's a perfect, self-sustaining ecosystem." Rimuru smiled at Ether. "Exactly. Good memory, Ether." He then turned to Kokomi, who was listening attentively. "What do you think? This could reduce Watatsumi's dependence on supplies from Narukami Island, especially for fruits and vegetables." Kokomi glanced toward the villagers in the field, her gaze softening. The sight of her people struggling had clearly weighed heavily on her. She turned back to Rimuru, her expression thoughtful. "It's a generous offer," she said after a moment. "But wouldn't that be a burden for you?" Rimuru shook his head. "Not at all. My space is infinite, so capacity isn't an issue." Kokomi hesitated. "How much land would you be willing to provide?" Rimuru crossed his arms and thought for a moment. "Enough to grow what you need and stock up for future use. However, I can't offer unlimited land, it could disrupt the trade economy, and that balance is important." Kokomi nodded, her gaze sharpening with understanding. "That's fair. And what would you ask for in return?" Rimuru's expression turned contemplative. After a brief pause, he said, "How about granting my friends and me free passage to Watatsumi Island and Enkanomiya? Of course, you'd have the right to revoke that access if you ever find us doing anything harmful to your island or its people." Kokomi's brows furrowed as she considered his proposal. Garo, standing beside her, glanced at her with concern, but he remained silent, trusting her judgment. "That's a reasonable request," Kokomi said after a moment. "But this is a significant decision. I'll need time to discuss it with my advisors and consider its long-term implications." "Of course," Rimuru said with a polite nod. "Take all the time you need. This is an important decision, after all." Kokomi offered him a grateful smile. "Thank you for understanding, Rimuru. Your offer could bring a lot of hope to Watatsumi, but it's not something to be rushed." With that, the conversation ended on a positive note. Rimuru could see the wheels turning in Kokomi's mind as she weighed the potential benefits and challenges of his proposal. The sight of the villagers in the field, however, remained a stark reminder of the urgency of the problem, and Rimuru felt confident he'd planted a seed of hope for this struggling island. As Kokomi and Goro walked away, their figures disappearing into the misty trails of Watatsumi Island, Rimuru sighed softly, his thoughtful expression betraying the calculations running through his mind. He suddenly closed his eyes, clasped his hands together, and murmured a soft incantation. Within moments, two identical clones of himself materialized beside him, their forms shimmering faintly in the soft light. Ether, noticing this, tilted his head in curiosity. "Where are you sending them this time?" he asked. Rimuru smiled knowingly. "Just a precaution. I want to confirm whether the Fatui have truly withdrawn from Inazuma or if they're just hiding in the shadows." Paimon crossed her arms and gave a serious nod. "That's smart. The Fatui are sneaky, they could be cooking up another one of their evil schemes." Rimuru chuckled lightly. "Exactly. Better to be prepared than caught off guard. Let's move on for now." As Ether and Paimon nodded in agreement, the scene shifted to the bustling streets of Narukami Island. Soldiers clad in the colors of the shogunate rushed through the streets, their footsteps echoing loudly against the cobblestone. Some were assisting civilians, ensuring their safety amidst the growing tension, while others were busy apprehending individuals linked to treasonous activities. Among them were officials and members of various commissions who had secretly collaborated with the Fatui. At the heart of the chaos stood Kuju Sera, her sharp eyes scanning the unfolding operation. The commanding officer of the Kuju clan carried herself with an air of unshakable resolve, barking orders with precision. "Search every corner," Sera instructed, her voice carrying over the clamor. "No one who has conspired with the Fatui must escape justice. Arrest them immediately and secure any evidence you find." Her soldiers saluted and swiftly dispersed, continuing their systematic sweep of the area. Amid the arrests, an old man dressed in a weathered olive-green kimono beneath a red haori with a yellow ribbon dashed through the streets, his wooden sandals clacking urgently against the ground. His graying hair framed his weathered face, now contorted in fear and frustration. This was Kuju Takayuki, the disgraced head of the Kuju clan, desperately fleeing from the pursuing soldiers. Takayuki darted into a narrow alley, but his age and weariness betrayed him. Within moments, the soldiers cornered him. One stepped forward, skillfully pinning his arms behind his back while others restrained him. "Unhand me," Takayuki bellowed, his voice trembling with both rage and desperation. Moments later, Kuju Sera arrived, her imposing presence causing the soldiers to stand at attention. Her golden gaze locked onto Takayuki with cold disdain as she stepped forward. "Master," Sera said, her voice calm but laced with iron. "Your escape ends here." The old man snarled, struggling against his restraints. "What do you think you're doing, Sera? How dare you disobey my orders? I am the head of the Kuju clan." Sera unrolled a scroll from within her robes and held it up before him. "This is the shogun's decree. All who collude with the Fatui are to be apprehended and brought to justice. And we have irrefutable evidence of your treachery." Takayuki's face twisted with fury. "You idiot! Have you lost your mind? Do you understand what you're doing?" He raised his voice, almost hysterical. "There are too many enemies out there who would tear us apart the moment they get the chance. For too long, our position has been coveted by others, and now we have the opportunity to gain the backing of a powerful nation, and you're throwing it all away." Sera closed her eyes momentarily, taking a deep breath, before responding in an unwavering tone. "The Kuju clan was entrusted with serving and protecting Inazuma, not selling it out for your ambitions. To betray the shogun's trust and the people of this nation in exchange for preserving your power is selfishness, not leadership." Her golden eyes opened again, this time burning with righteous indignation. "We worship the shogun, and yet you dare to betray the nation she cherishes. You've sold your soul to the Fatui for personal gain. Do you truly believe you can call yourself worthy of facing the shogun, or the people of Inazuma?" Takayuki's eyes burned with anger, his voice rising to a roar. "You insolent child. I did what I thought was necessary for our clan's survival. You call it selfishness, but I call it duty. What will you do when the Kuju clan falls because of your reckless loyalty?" Sera turned her back on him, her expression steely. "Enough. Take him away," she ordered her soldiers. The soldiers dragged Takayuki toward the cells beneath the Kuju clan estate as he shouted in rage, his voice echoing through the streets. Sarah, you ungrateful wretch, you'll regret this. Sarah remained still for a moment, letting out a breath as she composed herself. She then turned and began walking back toward the heart of the city to oversee the arrests of other Fatui collaborators. Her steps were firm, her resolve unwavering. This is the shogun's will, she murmured to herself. And I will see it carried out, no matter the cost. Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon had finally returned from their tour of the surrounding lands. They stood in the same place where Rimuru had been resting earlier. As they approached, Rimuru stretched casually, turning towards them with a smirk. Well, looks like everything is done, he said nonchalantly. Ether and Paimon exchanged confused glances. Paimon tilted her head and asked, what do you mean by that? Rimuru chuckled. I mean Ye did her job. Narukami Island is in chaos, and all those who conspired with the Fatui are being rounded up and arrested. Paimon sighed with relief. That's great news. Rimuru nodded. Also, it seems the information we got about the Fatui leaving Inazuma was accurate. My clones couldn't find anything suspicious except for an empty base-like structure on Yashiori Island. It seems they left in a hurry. An empty base? Ether asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Rimuru replied. I think they were working on something there. From what I gathered, they were using the crystal marrow found on Yashiori Island. The marrow contains the Tatarigami curse, which originates from the remnants of the slain god Orobashi. Paimon's eyes widened. Tatarigami. That stuff's dangerous. What were they planning to do with it? Rimuru concentrated for a moment, and a glowing orb appeared in his hand. It resembled a vision, but with a distinct design featuring the Fatui insignia inlaid in the center. Isn't this a delusion? Paimon gasped. It looks like the one Chilled used in Liu, but it's a little different. Correct, Rimuru said. It is a delusion, but upon closer inspection, I discovered something unusual. The Fatui were experimenting with it. This version drains life force from its user even more aggressively, and the crystal marrow plays a significant role in its production. That's awful, Paimon exclaimed. I knew it, they're always up to no good. Ether frowned. But why would they mass-produce these delusions? What's their goal? Rimuru crossed his arms thoughtfully. There's a good chance they were planning to distribute these to soldiers fighting on Yashiori Island. Given how quickly they were manufacturing them, it's plausible that they were preparing for something big. Paimon huffed, floating up and down in frustration. Those Fatui are always plotting something horrible. But if they were working on such an important project, why would they leave it all behind? That's what's puzzling, Rimuru admitted. It must have been an emergency. They even left some of their finished products behind. It's not like the Fatui to abandon such a key operation without reason. Do you think they left because of us? Ether asked. Rimuru shook his head. Unlikely. They know we're traveling across Teyvat, so it wouldn't make sense to set up a factory here where we're likely to pass through. Something else must have spooked them. Ether and Paimon nodded in understanding, though the mystery lingered in their minds. Well, Rimuru said, grinning mischievously. I'll think about it later. For now, I have more important business to take care of. Paimon raised an eyebrow. What could be more important than this? Rimuru's grin widened. I haven't gotten my money back, with interest, from those corrupt officials yet, have I? Ether blinked. How are you planning to do that? Rimuru smirked. Oh, don't worry about it. I've already sent my clones to Narukami Island to collect what they owe me. Inside, a young man dressed in an Inazuman soldier's uniform stumbled backward, his face pale and drenched in sweat. He tripped over himself, landing hard on the floor as he stammered, Please, don't do this. Standing before him was one of Rimuru's clones, holding a stack of documents and ledgers in one hand and a gleaming katana in the other. The clone stared down at him with an amused yet menacing expression. You already know the decree, the clone said coldly. The shogun has ordered the arrest of anyone who colluded with the Fatui or participated in corruption. And according to these, he held up the ledgers, you're guilty of both. The young man's face turned ashen. Sweat poured from his forehead like a broken faucet as he stammered, wait. Please, we can make a deal. I can give you a portion of the money I've collected. How about that? The clone's lips curled into a sly grin. now you're speaking my language. Let's start the negotiations, shall we? The scene cut to the clone stepping into the man's house, the door closing ominously behind him. After some time, the clone emerged from the house with a large bag of mora slung over his shoulder. He glanced back at the trembling soldier, who was still slumped on the floor. You're not so bad after all, the clone said mockingly, tossing the documents and ledgers at the man's feet. It's been a pleasure doing business with you, young gentleman. As the clone walked away, he sent the bag of mora into Rimuru's personal space with a flick of his wrist. Inside the house, the soldier let out a shaky sigh of relief. Finally. I'm safe. Outside the house, the clone grinned devilishly to himself. In his mind, Rimuru's voice echoed. Poor little thing. He thinks he's safe, but I already gave Ye Miko the documents about his corruption. He'll still pay for his sins. Besides, Seal only provided Ye with just enough proof to avoid suspicion about our transactions. Fair is fair. The clone chuckled darkly as he disappeared into the shadows. The scene shifted to another location in Narukami Island, where Rimuru's clone had just entered the lavish house of a middle-aged man. The man stood trembling, his face pale as he nervously addressed the clone. Let's talk this out. There's no need for things to get messy. I can give you a share of the money. Rimuru's clone raised an eyebrow, pretending to consider the offer. A share, you say? Now that sounds interesting. Very well. Go ahead, fetch the mora. The man quickly nodded, his lips curling into a sly grin. Wait here. I'll get it for you. He gestured towards a room. Please, have a seat while I retrieve it. The clone smirked and obliged, casually sitting down as the man exited through the door. As soon as the door shut, the man sprinted away, his grin widening as he rallied a group of armed soldiers waiting nearby. Returning moments later with reinforcements, he flung the door open, revealing at least 10 men armed with spears and swords. Well, looks like the tables have turned, the man sneered, standing confidently among the soldiers. Did you really think we'd give up our hard-earned money so easily? You fell for the oldest trick in the book. The soldiers surrounding him roared in laughter, pointing their weapons at the seated clone. But instead of panicking, Rimuru's clone chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair with an amused expression. Hard-earned money, you say? Taking bribes and exploiting innocent people is what you call hard work. The man's smirk faltered slightly. HMPH. Enough of your nonsense. You're surrounded, and there's no way out. Let's see you laugh when you're begging for your life. The clone stood up slowly, dusting off his sleeves. Looks like I'll have to teach you the hard way. The soldiers charged at him with full confidence, their weapons glinting in the light. The scene abruptly cut to the aftermath. The room was now in utter chaos. Furniture lay shattered, and soldiers were sprawled across the floor, groaning in pain. Some had broken teeth, while others sported swollen eyes, noses, and cheeks. Their weapons were scattered around them, useless. At the center of the room stood Rimuru's clone, calm and unscathed, one foot resting on the middle-aged man's swollen face as the man whimpered beneath him. Rimuru's clone wiped his hands with a pristine handkerchief, casually tossing it aside as he leaned down slightly. So, he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness, what do you say now? Want to keep going? The man beneath him coughed and wheezed, barely able to speak through his bruised and battered face. Please, stop this. Spare me. The mora you want is in the basement. The key, it's in my pocket. Rimuru's clone smiled brightly, as if the man had just said something delightful. Ah, what a fine gentleman you are. It's truly a pleasure doing business with you. Reaching down, the clone plucked the key from the man's pocket and stepped off him. He made his way to the basement, where he discovered several chests brimming with mora. With a flick of his wrist, the clone transported the entire stash into Rimuru's personal space. Before leaving, he tossed the documents and ledgers onto the pile of defeated soldiers. Be sure to hold onto these. The shogun's officials will be very interested in them. As the clone walked out of the house, he grinned to himself. In Rimuru's mind, his voice echoed with amusement. Another one down. Ciel's little plan is working perfectly. By the time the shogun's people arrive, this guy will already be paying for his crimes. And me, I'll just enjoy the spoils. The clone disappeared into the night, leaving behind a scene of poetic justice and broken pride. The scene transitioned to the morning, and the usually tranquil Narukami Island was anything but peaceful. Chaos erupted as shouts of rage and frustration filled the air. Kuju Sera, leading squads of Tenryo Commission soldiers, was systematically arresting every corrupted official and soldier on the island. The once powerful individuals, now stripped of their authority, yelled in despair and anger. "You don't understand. That blue-haired bastard tricked me. He's the real criminal. I'll skin him alive. I'll never forgive that demon." Their voices echoed through the streets as Sarah silently observed their pitiful display, her soldiers dragging them toward the detention cells. One particularly loud protester was the middle-aged man Rimuru had dealt with the previous night. His face was still swollen from the beating Rimuru's clone had given him. Struggling against the soldiers holding him, he shouted furiously, "You're making a mistake. That blue-haired bastard is behind all of this. He's the one who blackmailed me and stole from us." Kuju Sera raised an eyebrow, her piercing gaze locking onto the man. She looked down at the evidence, stacks of documents, ledgers, and, most importantly, the exact amount of Mora, 1 million, that the reports claimed he had embezzled. Cross-referencing the ledgers with the evidence, Sarah said coldly, "The records we've received indicate that you gained 1 million Mora through corruption. Coincidentally, we found exactly 1 million Mora hidden in your basement. You have no one to blame but yourself." The man's expression shifted from anger to realization. He knew Rimuru had played him like a fiddle, purposefully turning over just enough evidence to implicate him while pocketing the rest of the ill-gotten fortune. His face turned red with rage as he yelled, "That bastard! He's the one who set this up. I'll kill him with my own hands." In a blind fit of fury, the man shoved the soldiers holding him and broke free. His eyes were bloodshot, his veins bulging with unrelenting anger. He charged forward, screaming incoherently, but his rampage was short-lived. Sarah drew her bow with lightning speed, her aura radiating authority as she barked, "Stand down." The soldiers tackled the man to the ground before he could take another step, pinning him firmly. "Take him away," Sarah ordered, her tone sharp and unwavering. "And ensure he's locked up where he can't cause more trouble." As the soldiers dragged him off, still muttering curses about Rimuru, Sarah turned her attention back to the operation. Meanwhile, other corrupted individuals, desperate to escape, had already enacted their backup plans. Several of them rushed toward a secluded cove where boats awaited them, boats they had prepared in case of emergencies like this. But as they reached the boats, their hope quickly turned into despair. Every single boat had gaping holes in the hull, rendering them completely unusable. Floating atop the water beside the boats was a piece of parchment, with a crude but unmistakable drawing of Rimuru's face. His tongue was sticking out in mockery, and the words, "Better luck next time," were scrawled underneath. The sight of the note sent the would-be escapees into a frenzy. "That damned blue-haired bastard!" one of them shouted, kicking the useless boat in frustration. "He knew we'd try to escape," yelled another, clutching the parchment in fury. "He's mocking us." Their collective anger hit a fever pitch, but there was nothing they could do. Their carefully laid plans had been undone by Rimuru's clever traps, leaving them stranded and helpless. Back in town, Sarah continued her crackdown, rounding up the last of the corrupted individuals. Though she remained stoic, a hint of curiosity crossed her mind. How exactly had all of this evidence suddenly fallen into Ye's hands? She glanced down at the precise ledgers and documents, her sharp eyes catching small details. The information had been gathered meticulously, as if by someone who had infiltrated the ranks of these criminals for weeks, perhaps even months. She silently thought to herself, this blue-haired stranger, who exactly is he? And what's his true objective? Though grateful for the assistance, she couldn't shake the feeling that Rimuru was playing a much larger game, one that even she might not fully understand. Meanwhile, far away, Rimuru, his real body, stood on a hill overlooking the island, his clones having returned to him. "Looks like everything's settled," Rimuru said with a smirk. "Not bad for a night's work." Ciel's voice chimed in his mind. "You seem to have enjoyed yourself, but don't forget, the real reason we're here isn't to collect pocket change from corrupted individuals." Rimuru chuckled. "Of course, Ciel. But hey, cleaning up corruption and making a little extra mora. That's what I call multitasking." As the sun rose over Narukami Island, the cries of frustration from the corrupted echoed faintly in the distance, drowned out by the laughter in Rimuru's heart.